Okay, good afternoon, everybody. American Granny here. I was just watching Forbes on YouTube here, and they show a lot of the committee hearings and a lot of government stuff, regulation. What I'm personally wanting to know is, first of all, why are we continually increasing the taxes on our infrastructure? Yes, they are built by smaller companies. Not all of them are the big monopolies. And believe me, the smaller companies are being taxed out of business. Now, I don't know why we don't integrate all of these new technologies and use them at appropriate times when, like the hottest part of the year, you can run, actually, I would suggest your wind and solar combined during the hottest part of the years. Because if you put solar panels closer to these now new turbines that put out that run off the wind from all levels, from the ground up, instead of just the upper atmosphere, and they're less disruptive. And I thought this was a wonderful idea, but these need to be put in areas where we have solar panels, and it needs to be done because that will produce more flow in the lower atmosphere instead of all in the upper, and it can build a resource of energy that works together like AC and DC does. And during our winter months, when it's the coldest, we should switch our infrastructure over to nuclear. Our nuclear power plants can then operate some of these bigger businesses that build our infrastructure. That means everything is operating all year, but they are putting out less energy. They're not being required to support as much of an energy demand. It's kind of getting divvied up, and you make that work. Now, if a combination of solar, water, and wind technology does not work in combination with each other, just one thing, it's kind of like when you got the flu. You not only take your medicine, you will sip on hot teas or drink some soup, things that help your body to do what you want it to do. You want it to get its energy and strength back. So you give it these kind of things. And then, you keep your push on that until you're back up on your feet. Well, I think energy can work that way if we learn to combine all of our energy instead of letting them monopolize into big corporations that the government, because they're monopolizing so fast, is taxing to death just to try to keep a competition in there, because there really is none with the big ones. And they will, I assume, keep struggling till there's only one that's in power, because you know how they are about that. One is the dictator kind of thing about everything. They don't want you to think that. That's why we have all these lower branches. But I don't know why we're not doing that, because it seems like it would be very, very important. It would help the planet circulate some of this energy that is causing heating. Instead of adding to the heating, we might even be able to slow it down. You don't want to stop the heating. If you try to forcefully stop the heating of our planet, instead of bringing our own use just down to a level that's compatible to everything else that survives on this planet, we have reached a middle ground. We're not going for the bottom tier. We're not going for the top tier. And that is one of the problems wrong with governments. They go flip-flop from one extreme to the other. And the woke distraction was, I really believe that China had something to do with that, because it not only managed to sterilize so many Americans, and our children and adult Americans, that you can't think there was not some, the way it came through, it did come out of Asia first, the trend did. And of course these poor kids or people were probably paid. And so, I mean, when you don't want to pull up a gun in somebody's face, you learn how to give them a little bit of something they want, and then they will allow you to take or do with them basically whatever you want, as long as they are still getting this little bit. And I've said before that I thought our government seems to be weaning us actually off of dependency of our government. A lot of states are making it difficult because they don't want to give up the funds that come from the federal government to put you on food stamps, to put you on Medicaid. I do not want to live in a socialist country. Okay, I do believe that is more harmful. If you could find a balance between a socialist country, a communist country, and a capitalist country, and find the best things out of those three things, and then build a country off that. Instead of, you gotta be, no, just be one. Nope, just be one. Nope, just be one. Woke screamed about diversity. Our economy is based on big names that we've never heard of. And these big names we've never heard of like things divided. That's why you have so many separate individual resources. Now, I would rather cook with natural gas than cook with these electric stoves. I don't like everything in my home is electric dependent, because that means that my power company has to produce a lot more power to sustain my use. And I try to limit my use because I don't want to put that extra cost on my neighbors. Now, I know that sounds funny, and most of my neighbors around here I have never met. But I do know most of them are just common, regular folks. They're not rich. There are a few on our road that have some money, but I wouldn't call them, they're not the super rich and powerful. They're just kind of the lucky rich that some Americans are able to achieve. But I have other resources that I use. I have several small grills that when our power is out, I can still cook. I can preserve meat if my generator should go down and I got to worry about my meat thawing. I know how to preserve my meat, and naturally. And I don't like to do it too often, because you're adding a lot of salt into your diet for preserving your meat. And and setting up smokers out of old-fashioned wood, keeping the fires going to do a proper smoke job. I do know how to do it all, but I'm going to tell you it's very difficult. And when you're 60 years old, you know, it's a big issue. So anyway, it was the Forbes thing that got me started, and I I think that we are really going about, sorry, had a critter. I think it was a horsefly. But we have issues with all of our power companies have been allowed to get super greedy because they don't have to work with other power generating companies. They get to try to go for the super monopoly. And we can stop that by making these companies contract to each other to build up resources for ourselves that are not dependent on coal. Now, I do understand that coal, there is a lot of carbon there. Just leave it in the earth and let the earth make its diamonds. But some coal will come through a time where the resource will be in demand. Not as much, but that all depends on how well we've got our grid going. And our grids are for shit. You know that. Now, in Arkansas, I give them kudos because I do see them maintaining their infrastructure, at least here in my local area, around Mountain Home area. And Calico Rock. I'm kind of between Mountain Home, Calico Rock. But here they do seem to take pretty good care of it. We have hydroelectricity, not nuclear. And I know they're putting in another power station near Mountain Home on our way out there. You see it after, I think, before you come into, no, it's after you come in to Norfolk and go through the town. It's, they're finally getting it built there, but this is a much smaller infrastructure. Even though it supports thousands of people, this section of the dam does a very fine job. And they do maintain it. You always see them out there working and taking care of it. And a constant presence of employees there has been very beneficial to the region. And at noon we get our whistle. They're releasing water from the dam. And it's almost like clockwork. I think they do it periodically just to charge up really good all the stations that they've got. And they are putting one out closer to our area because we finally have enough people in our area to supply electricity, and we needed a station separate from the dams. Even though the dam's not that far. And it's only small, and because it's meant for a small community. And if you ask me, that is so wise. Now out here, solar panels can be useful. I'm not going to say they're not. I would like to get a few of my own and figure out a way that I can utilize that during times that we do have power outages because of winter storms or anything like that. Because I have everything is electric in my house, and to use it you're going to need some kind of generated energy when your power is out. Now I have a small generator. It works very good, but it uses fuel, and we don't use it very often. We pull it out, my husband mostly, and he sets it up and drags the cords and does what he has to do. And we managed to keep our refrigerator and our fish tank and a couple of fans this last summer to keep us cool. So that was pretty cool. And I'll tell you what, it gave us our first real taste of what it would be like here without our power grid. And I have to tell you, it was during some of the hottest part of the summer. We got hit by a tornado, and we only had to go a couple days without power. And that's when we realized that means we have no water. That's a problem. So that's something we've been working on, getting some kind of backup solutions, like our neighbors are doing. Now, to get those solar batteries has gotten so out of control. Only rich people can afford to get an actual solar battery. But I have learned that if you have a couple solar panels and you can get them into some good sunlight and you charge up a regular battery like a car battery, and it does work, it will charge them. And it's sometimes depending on the battery. Sometimes it's a trickle charge. Also depends on the solar panels you get. But they have gotten outrageous. I would only want a couple of them here. Now, I looked at doing the big solar energy thing, and they wanted just for the solar energy setup was more than 3/4 of the value of my property. And no, I can't do that. That'd be taking on a mortgage. And I don't want an $80,000 mortgage. And at that point, we had just got out of an $80,000 mortgage. And we got this place. So now we are just trying to build up some kind of infrastructure. Now, my husband has been a laborer all his life. And I do mean all of it. If it was baling hay or working at one of the mills there in Texas, where he grew up, he was a homegrown boy. And that's one of the things I really did like about him. And he's good with his hands and machinery, and he's very, very smart. So, I was looking for someone in my life when we came together that was more creative and less destructive than the previous relationships that I and my partners built. I'm not going to say that it was all their fault. It wasn't, because I can look back and see my crazy. And Dennis, Steve, sorry about that. I've grown up since then a lot, and so have y'all, and I can tell, and I'm glad that we're still friends, and that we have that connection of caring about each other. It's a good thing to do. A lot of couples can't do that, but one of the things that once we had the actual time apart, in both cases, the desperation to hold on to each other kind of lessens, and you start to begin to move forward in your own lives. And so you have to kind of look at, if relationships come to an end, I don't care how good they start out, if they come to an end, you do not want to make an enemy. And by behaving really badly towards your soon-to-be ex-partner is only going to make things harder for you and them to move on, because you're going to have too much bitterness. And it's a bitterness that you've created for yourselves. If you can find a way, especially after you've had that time distance, unless of course they were too dangerous kind of people. Mine weren't. They were just young and struggling to figure things out as much as I was. So, and they came from different backgrounds. So it was a thing where after that time span where you're away from each other, you still communicate, maybe not as much, depending on how the other person communicates with you. But if you're doing the constant calling and screaming, name and calling and I hate you and bringing up from the very first mistake or flaw you ever saw and then going through the whole, don't rehash it. It's already been lived. It cannot be changed in the past, but it can be changed in the future. And that's something that I would like my viewers to keep in mind who are going through roughness in their relationships, because not all relationships are meant to stay as they are. Some are meant to go different paths so that you can experience better ways of being yourself and being with a partner. It's not easy. Okay, guys, I'm 20 minutes, so it's going to scream at me. I got to close down, and I got to get back to work. I've been sitting here crocheting and sipping on some coffee that I had. I had a nice morning. I actually spent it doing a little self-maintenance. I even ironed my apron, but it's so that it'll sit right better. Okay, anyway, I'm having a good day. I'm not overly stressed out, but it is 1 o'clock and I have not eaten anything, although my sugars have been up because I'm sipping coffee. It's getting about time for me to grab something to eat. I'll make myself a sandwich. I don't eat heavy during the day at all, and now I'm learning not to eat nowhere near as heavy as I used to for my last meal, because it really is a lot of work on your body to digest that food when you're sleeping. And so I've also, the old people who eat their dinner at 4 or 5, well, I don't go that early. I eat about 6. And then I'll have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich for dessert about 8 o'clock at night. And then I wait for the hour or whatever for my sugar spike. And then I can go to bed and usually not have too many problems. No, I don't take heart medicine. I have used it and it's kept me alive in the past. But I like trying to manage it myself. And sometimes I'm really good at it, and sometimes I am not really good at it. So, you know how that goes. Alrighty. I love y'all. American Granny out. Mwah. Later, dudes.